So the general cycle for those that are just out to con people is make a good product or a relatively decent product, get a bit of a reputation for the brand to be good, and then reduce the dose of the active ingredient to maximize profit until the point where the brand is damaged, and then reform, new name, better quality, and repeat the process.
People missed you this week. You know that? I'm like, where's Dave? And I told them you had a doctor's appointment. And they were like, oh, okay. Well, I hope that lad is doing well. That's what somebody said. They called you a lad.
People can miss me by subscribing to my GoFundMe page.
What's up?
Dave a Pie page.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally. All of our programming is brought to you by you, the people of Patreon. We're brought to you by Strom Sports Nutrition, great health and performance supplements from the UK. Also, we are brought to you by evalbloodanalysis.com. Get your lab work done by Dave, just like all the famous pros do in the UK. And we are brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. Use our code THINKOVER there. High-quality, third-party tested supplements from a company you can trust. And SupplementSource.ca. Great deals that change week to week. Dave, you're back, and people missed you. They were clamoring, waiting for Dave to return. What's up?
People need to have greater expectations in their lives.
What do you mean?
Well, if they're missing me, they really have little to live for anymore, do they? I mean, let's be fair. If my absence is such an impact to the quality of their life.
Well, listen, we have a bunch of stuff. You missed out on all the excitement. You didn't get to see us put up the Broderick episode this past week. It did really well. Broderick gave me crap through half of it, and I'm grateful to know that our audience caught on to that. They saw what was happening there. So thank you guys for watching and enjoying seeing me get stomped on by Broderick. That was fun. And today we've got a topic for you guys, which is basically how frequently or how often is gear faked anymore? Dude, it was a huge problem 15, 20 years ago, especially with all of the pharma stuff. And you guys, we had experts. Do you remember those days, Dave? There would be experts, and they'd be like, you'd look at two different vials. They look absolutely identical, and you'd say, well, the font on the E on the expiration date over here is different than the font over here. And for that reason, we know that this one is fake. But dude, like, you wouldn't know.
Package was the other one as well, wasn't it? You know, something to do with how the packet was printed, and
yeah,
I remember all that shit.
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing is, let's deal with pharma fakes, actually, because if you think that fake pharmaceutical drugs are made to con bodybuilders, then you're sorely misinformed.
Yeah.
Those drugs are not made to con bodybuilders. Those drugs are made to con hospitals.
Whew.
And unlike a lot of, well, all hormones, they're a highly controlled drugs. So once they've entered the warehousing system for medical supply, they are quite regulated, they are quite controlled. So It's very easy for a section of what is produced to be filtered off into the black market for bodybuilders before it goes into the forgery of getting it into the warehousing system for medical supply. But those drugs are made very large scale, and they are made. I mean, the ampoule machines, the machines that actually make the single mil ampoules, are incredibly expensive bits of kit. They're not cheap in any way.
Dude, I saw one of those in a bust once, and it was in an apartment in Poland. It was like this crappy old apartment, and it was a big machine, and you could see that it would spin around. And it was used for creating amps, and they were just cranking out counterfeit amps in this little apartment building in Poland. I'm sure that somewhere down the line there was some Polish gangster with a tracksuit, a neck tattoo, and a grill that was operating that whole thing. I am so certain just by the looks of that scene. In fact, I feel like there's a Polish gangster behind every fake amp that's out there, or maybe Russian. I don't know.
The thing is the counterfeit drug market for conning hospitals and drug supply is big. It's a big market. There's a lot of money involved. It's very much organized crime. And it's big business. So they, those operations don't set up think we're going to sell these to bodybuilders. They set up think we're going to con the supply chain. But inevitably, those drugs get sidelined into the bodybuilding market.
Which makes more sense, I guess. At that point, I suppose I could see that, man. Like, you're going to sell a couple amps and make, $20-30 or something off some guy? Or are you going to sell a pallet of this stuff? And you've told us before, growth hormone has been pretty much the same thing with fake pharma growth throughout Europe.
Yeah. And then you've obviously got UGL. There's sort of a few motivators within UGLs. I mean, the first one is obviously con people. We're going to produce a completely pile of crap product because we're literally trying to rip people off. The problem with that is with UGLs, it's very brand driven. You buy a lab. You don't buy test sip. You buy a lab's test sip.
Right.
So you buy by brand name. So when a lab decides to produce a completely counterfeit product, as in there's just no active ingredient whatsoever, it isn't that long before the name's going to be damaged and that lab can no longer operate and they need to rebrand.
Mm-hmm.
So the general cycle for those that are just out to con people is make a good product or a relatively decent product, get a bit of a reputation for the brand to be good, and then reduce the dose of the active ingredient to maximize profit until the point where the brand is damaged, and then reform, new name, better quality, and repeat the process.
Yeah.
Sometimes, though, drugs are usually not completely counterfeit, but underdosed because of supply chain issues.
So it's not intentional, you're saying?
Well, it's intentional, but it's to get through. So for argument's sake, let's say a lab's producing 10,000 vials a week, which is not mega numbers in lab terms. And they have only got enough raw supply to produce 5,000 vials. But they've got a customer base needing 10,000 vials a week. So they're not going to turn around to their customer base and say, sorry, we haven't got it this week. You're just going to have to wait. So what they'll do is they'll just produce 10,000 vials at half strength.
Yeah.
For 1 week.
On that note,
and then
seeing a company that never has anything out of stock is a red flag. It's not a bad thing to see a company that says, oh, we're out of stock on this, and this right now. ETA is next week or whatever. But if it's always all in stock, that can be a questionable thing for sure.
Yeah. So, so you've got underdosing, and it's predominantly underdosing when this will occur, when a lab is just struggling for raws and trying to meet their supply quotas.
Yeah.
And then you've got the labs that do completely counterfeit fake gear, and that is just literally con artists trying to rip people off. And then there's also mistakes. I mean, I know a lab that produced FemTest and actually got the batch mixed up.
Oh, no.
And it got sent out as regular test. And it was completely unintentional. Luckily, the guy records, he does a batch numbering on everything he does.
Yeah.
So when it came back to him, look, this stuff's crap. He looked at the batch numbers and realized what had gone on and could, he's only at low volume, so he could contact everybody and say, look, I've screwed up. This is the situation. Send it me back. I'll send you some proper stuff out.
Yeah.
But so you do get genuine mistakes. You've got to remember as well that, in an environment where there's a lot of these vials filled and capped with no labels on.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have to be labeled by somebody, and there's there is chance there. Vials get mixed up, labels get mixed up, things can go wrong there. So, though the vast majority of underdosing is in some way intended to deceive, be it just that we haven't got enough stock to get through and we're trying to squeeze it through, or a deliberate attempt to rip people off and obviously use less product to make more profit. But there are also genuine human error and mistakes that will occur where odd vials and little batches get through that are wrongly labeled or wrongly dosed, just down to a mistake made by somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, what I have noticed in general is we don't see completely bullshit stuff anywhere near as much as we used to.
I'd agree with that.
So we'll see underdosed, but we don't always, we don't that often see someone that says, "Oh, I'm on this, that," and it's just pure oil.
Yeah,
because they've not even suppressed; they've still got natural slow, but they've still got natural production going on.
yeah. Early 2000s. I'm sorry, I was just gonna say early 2000s. Ron Partlow had said he never used Primo through his competitions because it was just too much of a gamble, and that's the way I saw it too. I never really wanted to mess with Primo much years ago, just because it was so much of a gamble. Unlike today, where it's so popular that people understand the price and they're willing to pay it, and that the supply is so much better. Versus trying to get real Primo 20 years ago was a racket.
I mean, obviously, I see bloods every week. I see people that are on cycle every week. I have a fairly reasonable idea of where things should be based on dose to level.
Yeah.
But having said all that, literally last week, and this was a TRT guy on legit prescribed test, and he was needing to use double what the dose should have been, because he just metabolized tests so quickly, it was unreal.
And the test was normal dose, like it was good?
Yeah, it was, it's from a pharmacy. I know exactly where it came from.
Okay.
Proper doctor script pharmacy, UK manufactured Testosterone.
Yeah.
And he was needing to take 250 milligram a week to provide a level of just in the low 20s, whereas most people, 250 milligram a fortnight is going to put you in the low 20s. Okay. So he was double. He was absolutely double what he needed. And at one point, he was even running 500 milligram a fortnight in one shot. So doing 2 mil on once a fortnight.
Yeah.
And before anyone says anything, SUST is designed to peak, plateau, and then drop off. It doesn't act like a single ester and go up and down.
Yeah.
He was still not breaking out of range.
Huh.
He's just metabolizes it. Well, we don't know if there's something. He's on ADHD meds, so we don't know if there's anything there that's creates some sort of interaction with metabolism faster than normal.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I've seen people on test, legit, but they've still got FSH and LH function.
That's weird.
I've got one at the moment. He's an old guy. He's on TRT, prescribed by a doctor. And his FSH and LH is still functioning, and I'm just working through it at the moment. He just sent me his latest bloods today.
Hey guys, so I'm seeing that like 35% of you are not subscribed to the channel, which on one hand is great. That means that YouTube is getting us in front of new people. On the other hand, that means that we might not see each other again if you don't hit the subscribe button. We have several bodybuilding podcasts each week. We've got our reaction videos. We're doing YouTube shorts. So let me encourage you right now to subscribe and hit the bell. And if you're enjoying this show, then please hit the like button and leave us a comment. Yeah, so there's nothing you can think of that's potentially even doing this. This is just, that's an oddity, man.
Yeah, well, I've had it once before, and the guy was on a TRT dose. He still had full function FSH and LH, so we stopped the TRTs and retested him, and his test level dropped by the TRT dose. Okay. And his FSH and LH still there. So it was definite he was still producing natural test on a TRT. He had to go, he didn't shut down till he went above 500 milligrams.
Okay. Wow.
So there's always going to be these weird ones that throw everything out.
Yeah.
But in general, you should see. The only other thing you'll see as well is you'll sometimes see level elevations or level spikes within 2 or 3 days of injection.
Are we talking about fake gear here still, or?
Well, no, just to say, because obviously what people do is they'll take an amount of tests, then they'll look at the level, and if the level's low, they might think, oh, well, the gear's under dose, that's why my level's low.
Yeah.
So I was just saying that there can be some exceptions, and in the same way you can get people that metabolize drugs faster,
yeah,
you can get the opposite.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I've seen people on TRT doses with test levels in 70, 80 nmol.
Wow.
But you can also get a false spike post-injection as well. And from what I can work out, it's to do with scar tissue and how the oils and how the hormones getting released into the bloodstream.
Okay, so it's just kind of sitting in a depot somewhere where blood can't break it down and carry it away, is what it sounds like.
And then all of a sudden it just drops in all at once.
Huh. So today, would you say that can you think of anything? Well, I mean, we have had multiple discussions about blends potentially being an issue where, and you had shown us lab results where all these different blends like Test, Tren, Mast, Primo, whatever, that they were all like none of them contain Masteron from this particular brand, that you were basically going to get like 2 out of the 3 things that were supposed to be in the blend. So we know blends can be kind of funky. Overall, though, it's not as bad as it used to be. The fake market.
I would have said the only other blend that's notoriously never right is Sust.
Oh, where you're not getting what they say. The 4 esters
at the right balances between each other. That would be the only other one. But yeah, it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. Nowhere. I think probably where I would ask questions about whether I think there's a lot of counterfeit is in the ancillaries that a lot of UGLs are producing under their own brands.
Really?
So Proviron in particular. I see a lot of results where I'm like, they're on Proviron daily, and it's like I wouldn't expect to see estrogen that high, or I wouldn't expect to see SHBG at that level with someone who's taking Proviron daily. So I would say the drug that jumps out at the moment as being one that's struggling for genuinity would be Proviron.
Okay, and I feel like that might be more of a UK thing. I don't even think Proviron's that popular over here anymore. It's kind of it's just not as big a one. What about this? So I feel like there's a middle ground in there with labels. So I've seen some packaging that was amazing. Like I'm talking UGL that comes in a box and has a blister pack. And then guess what? The pills did absolutely nothing. Like it looked like it could have tricked you into believing that it was some sort of pharma product. I've also seen vials that literally had like the crappiest home printer labels on them, but the guy knew what he was doing. I would say, so you can't really say for sure whether a label is going to show that it's a good product or not. But I will say this, that across the board, I want to shop with a company that's going to put some effort in. You know what I mean? If it's just a Sharpie written on a glass vial, it makes me wonder what other corners they're cutting. But just because it comes in a real shiny box doesn't mean that I think it's great either. So it's kind of hard to say how important labels are,
Well, you also get this mid-factor producer where, I mean, your typical UK UGL is going to be housed either in somebody's home or a garage or a unit or some sort of room, and that'll be it.
Yeah.
But then you get companies like Alpha Pharma, which were a pharmaceutical company. They just didn't have the licenses.
Okay.
And they set up, it was a Dutch guy, he set up in India. So he basically opened a pharmaceutical production place, but he didn't have any licenses for the products he was producing.
Okay.
And they sold them out. And they looked as legit as anything. It was ampules, it was blister packs, everything was on the top. You got 10 mils as well, but he was just a lab with no license. So you do get that sort of halfway thing, which is halfway between a legit company and a full underground lab.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, packaging can be, I mean, I remember some stuff, they were candy stripe labels.
Okay.
And it was good gear, but it was garbage from a point of view of how it was presented and how it looks. And then, you get the fancy stuff with the 3D holograms and all the serial numbers that you can go on the website and double check and all this, and it's absolute crap.
Yeah.
So yeah, unfortunately, the way it's dressed is no real way of indicating whether it's good or bad. I'm afraid it just happens to be luck of the draw. It's always going to be a problem when you're dealing with anything that's an unregulated black market. You're always going to have people that will cut corners.
Yeah.
And we used to sort of say, see what people are using, see what's got a good reputation. But now the labs are paying people to go online and shout bollocks about the product, even if they're using it or not.
Oh, they did that back then, though, too. I mean, I know there were plenty of people that were planted on the message boards that were somehow or another being paid for, either the source was supplying all their gear for free, or they're getting a percentage, or, something.
Yeah, I mean, I know a guy, I won't mention his name, who must have had 15, 20 different Facebook profiles.
Okay.
He would literally be having conversations in a chat online with 6 of his fake profiles, all talking to each other, claiming all to be independent. Oh, yeah, I tried that. I thought it was really good. And, bullshit like that. So it can get very difficult to navigate at times.
Yeah, I would say I would avoid the people, and I don't know if you've gotten this, Dave, but I get it on social media now, where somebody either tries to friend me, and then I look at their profile, it's all these different gear products. Or they just message me and they say, hey, are you a bodybuilder? And if you type yes, they're going to be like, oh, do you need anything? Because I can hook you up. And they treat you like you're their best friend, and they're really doing you a favor, and they really like you, and they think you've got a good physique. Guess what, man? I don't trust those guys for anything, because there's no accountability on the back end of that. You know what I mean? Like, you send them money, there's no reason for them to send you anything, other than, I don't know. I just don't think it's the way people are legitimately going to build a business. So I'd say look out for those people.
Yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, just use some common sense. Why would you give someone money for something that you've not seen, you know nothing about it or where it's come from?
Yeah.
You wouldn't do it in any other walk of life. You won't ring a guy and say, right, I'm putting $10,000 in your checking account for that car you're selling. I'll be down to pick it up next week.
Right, yeah.
But we do it with drugs because we think we have to, because, well, they're illegal and they're underground and we have to be. No, there's still, you have every argument to have a legitimate purchase process with this.
Yeah, kind of. It is a little bit of a gray area, though, on how you're getting your, you know what I'm saying, how all those things are done. So I kind of get it. I still think, you know what, try to rely on a network of people. Try to actually know those people in that network.
It was much nicer when you went to the big guy in the gym.
Yeah. Were you the big guy? You were the big guy in the gym, Dave. You realize that, right?
You know what? I not something I've ever really got into.
But I'm sure a lot of people thought you did. Like, oh, there's no question. That's the dealer over there.
Yeah, but it was something I never, you don't mates out and sort bits and bats out, point people in the right direction, all that shit. But it's something I never really got into. And I'm glad I didn't, because there can be a lot of money made. And I do think once you get used to that, it must be very difficult to move away from it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope we helped people out with this in some fashion or another. And if you guys had any more specific questions about like fake gear, I mean, don't tell us a brand, because the reality is there are so many I have people reach out to me all the time and they're like, oh, have you heard of, Phoenix Pharmacies? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. There's 1,000 labs out there now, a new one every day. So
yeah, I stay way clear of that, because one, I don't want to get into lab bashing for a start. And there's very few labs that I know firsthand I feel are decent, so I'm very limited and generally avoid that conversation like the plague if I can.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons, guys, that we don't really make recommendations here. I don't want to stand behind anybody. I don't have absolute proof that it's going to be good. We got a bunch of listener questions, though, and a couple episodes ago, we did an episode that was like the best budget cycle, or getting huge, getting masked up on a budget cycle, something like that. Somebody asked us a comment on that question. They said, what about a no limit budget, a sky's the limit cycle? I call that under construction 3.
I call that myostatin suppression.
But is it real though? Like, are you going to be able to get myostatin inhibitors?
You are, but you're looking at tens of thousands.
Yeah. I know somebody who's a pro who supposedly had used them in the last year. He's a huge dude, but I don't know whether it actually did anything or not. He's not double the size he was a year ago,
There are developmental drugs that aren't quite where they need to be, but from a point of view of working in the sense of putting muscle mass on, they would be effective. But you're going to have to find someone who works in chemical research that's working on one of those projects that can then develop the antibodies for you, because obviously myostatin inhibitors are live biodrugs. They're actually living things. They're grown. So it's very expensive stuff, even if you can find someone that does it. I've heard rumors of a couple of people.
Yeah.
And I would say one of them in particular I find believable.
Okay.
But that was due to some other factors that became apparent. That person's no longer with us, so I'm not even gonna say the name. But yeah, there was things that came out post-mortem that would have indicated that they had potentially been messing with that stuff.
Oh, geez. Okay. Yeah, well,
that wasn't the cause, by the way. That wasn't the cause, but there were factors that pointed to that.
Okay, well, let's go with what's now available. I don't see there as being anything that's like, oh man, I need I mean, outside of growth would be the only real expensive thing, but gear's not that expensive where, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you save your money up, you can put together like the best cycle you could possibly put together, and it's, you know, it's not like you'd be able to double it. You know what I'm saying? It's not like if you had twice as much money, you'd double that or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a linear curve. You know, twice as much gear doesn't mean twice as much growth. In fact, very far from it. And there gets a point where I think the high gear actually starts to become counterproductive.
I agree. Yeah.
But you're gonna be, you know, where your money's gonna go in this stuff is gonna be in that more experimental areas of potentially looking at like stem cell stuff. You know, things like that are developmental areas of potential muscle growth, rather than the traditional sort of steroid stack. Because, like you said, they're quite freely available now. They're not stupidly expensive. Obviously, if no budget, you would go to pharma of every product you could.
Yeah.
You know, but beyond that, you're not looking at anything that's particularly different. Where the big money spend would be is going to be in this fringe developmental area where we've got new drugs and new types of drugs being developed within research that potentially have a benefit to muscle growth.
And even like growth and IGF, you could spend a whole lot of money just in those two things alone, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, IGF, if you start going like stuff like acrylics, it's going to be incredibly expensive. Now, I've never experienced high-dose acrylics, but I have spoke to someone who did, and they said it was actually very painful to endure.
Yeah.
A lot of joint pain, a lot of muscular pain. They said it was actually very, very painful to endure.
That's what I've heard about. That's what I've heard about real follistatin too. It's a painful experience.
I don't know what they got from a point of view of results. Never got that far in the conversation.
Yeah. All right. How about this one? So Dave was featured in a Daily Mail article this week. Please ask him what he thinks of this article. I'm interested to know if they actually interviewed him for this or if they dug up some old stuff on him. Also, what do you think of the photographs included in the article of the reporter pretending to inject gear using a tourniquet wrapped around his arm? Personally, I find this photography really irresponsible. Great show as always. Dave and I reviewed this before the show, and because of that particular photograph, I don't think that we can really show this. I can say that they've got this picture of you, Dave. There's this picture, and then they've got this guy. And I'm only going to scroll this far, but he's holding a gear vial in a 3cc syringe, which is ridiculous.
I don't recall speaking to the Daily Mail that I spoke to somebody recently, which he could have been the Mail. Normally, I avoid the Mail because they're a bunch of dicks.
Are they?
Oh fuck yeah! They don't worry about the truth. Let's just put that somewhere in the middle. I have spoke to them a long time ago, so this could have been on file info, because when you give a report interview, they basically own that interview from that point moving forward, and as long as it doesn't misrepresent what you've said, they can pretty much do what they want with it.
Looks like they talked to Jim McVeigh. You know Jim, the professor of substance use and associated behaviors at Manchester Metropolitan.
Well, he's not at Manchester anymore. He's at Birmingham. That's the thing.
Well, that's what it says in here, Dave.
Oh, no. Sorry, he is at Manchester. Sorry. No, he isn't. I apologize. He is at Manchester.
He studied steroid use for over 30 years, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, he headed up the steroid research base at Liverpool, John Moores University. And now he heads up ASUK, which is basically oversees steroid research in the UK. But Jim's talking about retiring, I believe. I think he's coming away from it all.
Okay. I'm looking for their mention of you. Like, they showed that picture at the top, and they briefly mentioned you. But as I go through this, I'm just seeing like a whole crap storm of all sorts of other stuff. And I don't see more about you.
I did speak to somebody probably 3 months ago, and that was more just a general overview of, the state of play sort of stuff.
Okay.
Why people use, what people use for, that sort of thing. It was nothing groundbreaking or anything particularly interesting, and it was more just a general sort of a reporter trying to get a feel for steroid use. Now, I'm sure he was from The Guardian.
This guy, okay, so they've got this picture up of you, and it says, Yorkshireman Dave Crosland said last year, there is no doubt my steroid use will be the death of me. So far they've had like two little pictures of you in a little thing, but I don't see them actually talking. Oh, wait. Yorkshireman Dave Crosland's used steroids since he was 17. He was voted the biggest biceps in Britain in 2016, but Dave was also known his drug use will kill him. There is no doubt my steroid use will be the death of me, he said last year. I expect to be dead by 50, and yet he has no regrets. The price I paid for what I wanted to achieve, I'm happy with what I achieved in life. That's all they have on you.
Yeah, I might be having words. That's a little bit of a misquotation.
Yeah. But they headed this whole article up with that picture of you too. Like, you were the first that used your likeness, Dave, to really get their message out.
I mean, the thing is, you see, this is where it gets really awkward. This is why you've got to be so careful. I have never denied or been in any unrealistic sort of image of the fact that I abuse steroids at a high level.
Yeah.
I didn't just cycle. I mean, I proper took the piss and used tons.
Yeah.
And it's things like that which make it really difficult, because it's like, yeah, I did fully expect my anabolic use to be the death of me, and I didn't think I was going to live past 50. And I know it will still play a factor in the decline of my health, and it has played a factor in the decline of my health. There's no denying that. But what's missing in that conversation is the contextual element of, but I absolutely abused the living shit out of this stuff.
Okay, yeah, you weren't like,
I wasn't
doing
taking 500
TRT plus. Yeah,
you know what I mean, and that's the bit that's so difficult to navigate, because they technically haven't misquoted what I've said, and then there would be potential. But I'm gonna put a complaint in, because there's the argument that that's a misrepresentation of what I was saying.
How about this? They said that you were voted the biggest biceps in Britain in 2016. I didn't know anything about this. What is that? That's a thing.
The thing was the biggest arms in Europe, I believe, around then.
Did you, was there like a contest or something? How did that work?
Well, no, it was a bit weird. So there was a guy called Tiny Irons, a black guy who's a big synthol advocate. He's a nice guy. Does wrestling, done a bit of film work, does a lot for charity.
Okay.
And he was very self-promoting about the size of his arms, but it was very, very obviously oil.
Yeah.
And so there ended up being a little bit of a sort of rivalry about, biggest arms and all this shit.
Okay.
And I met him at one body party. In fact, there's a picture of me, him, Trevor Crouch, IFBB Pro, Mr. T, and another guy, all doing a bicep pose. And it was then when I actually got to know him a little bit, because I used to think it was all a bit cringy how he promoted himself and everything else. But then when I met him, he didn't take himself that seriously. He was generally just, promoting and having a laugh, and he did so much for like underprivileged kids and charity stuff and things like that. And he's a really nice guy. But there was this little bit of a who had the biggest arms thing going on for a while.
Is this him?
Then, yeah.
Was this him here?
Yeah, that's Tiny Irons, yeah.
Oh boy, Dave. Oh boy. And you hopefully you beat him. You showed him what was up in the arm department.
But the thing is, I mean, you look at that and you sort of perceive a certain type of person.
Okay. Yeah, I would, for sure.
Yeah. And then you meet him, and he's a lovely guy.
He's a really nice guy, huh?
He does so much stuff with kids, and he does this wrestling stuff, and he's, oh God, that silly cow, Jodie Marsh.
I don't know who she is.
You don't need to. But
silly cow.
he's actually a really nice guy.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that. That's nice. All right. Let me see what else we have here. We can get down to business and actually share some good insights with people. Does Masteron, Primo or Anavar alter testosterone level blood test results in any way? Context would be going on TRT and not wanting the ancillaries to alter my testosterone level results for the doctor. So basically he's, I think, doing like TRT, and he wants to know, will these other compounds affect his results?
They'll affect his estrogen.
Estrogen and potentially all your other health markers, right?
Well, what you're probably going to see is an elevation in DHEA.
Yeah, okay.
If the TRT clinic tests for that, they may not. You're potentially going to see, well, with Primo, you'll see a reduction in estrogen. Maybe not so much with Mast, and maybe not so much with Anavar. You might see a slight drop. But yeah, they're going to be the main areas that are probably going to be impacted.
Yeah, cholesterol, hematocrit.
HDL.
Yeah, all those things.
Yeah, but this is the problem, isn't it? Because so you do TRT, script from your doctor, all good, and then you add in something. Let's say we add in Primo or we add in Mast.
Yeah,
and then you've got a change in DHEA levels. Mm-hmm. You've got an blood thickening, and you've got a lowering of HDL.
Yeah.
So then the doctor like, you're not doing very well on this TRT. Let's bring your TRT dose down so we can mitigate these negatives that are happening.
Right.
And where he was happy to run you at the top end of range, he's now pushing you down to the bottom end of top end or the top of middle.
Yes.
Because he's trying to offset these negatives. So it can kick you back a little bit if you're not careful.
Yes, I hopefully have a client that is listening to this right now who, I'm not going to say your name, but you know who you are. He was on a very mild cycle, okay, but enough to make some progress, and he got an exertion headache at the gym, first one of his life, and it was like blinding pain, right? Have you ever had an exertion headache before, Dave? Oh, dude, they are the worst. They are the worst.
I've burst blood vessels in my head training. So basically giving myself a mild aneurysm.
So he goes to the hospital because he genuinely is like, crap, am I having an aneurysm? You know what I mean? Which I'm not going to fault him for that. Like, if you're afraid, I would not. Like me, I'm probably dumb. I'd be like, well, I'm just going to tough it out and take some Advil. And if it doesn't go away by tomorrow, if the aneurysm doesn't fix itself by tomorrow, I'll be all right. You know, he went to the
They can be extremely painful.
Oh, yeah. So he goes in, they do an MRI. Thankfully, everything's clear. There's no brain tumor, did not have an aneurysm, all that. But his hematocrit was mildly elevated. It was like a 50 or 51. So he was just mildly elevated. But at the hospital, they made a big deal out of it. And they're like, oh, man, this is bad. You need to get some sort of bloodlet. This is bad news that you're in trouble here. Your hematocrit is high. And there's all these repercussions that can occur from this. So from there, he immediately phoned his TRT doctor and was like, hey, I need to do a bloodlet. TRT doctor thinks he's been on TRT all this time. He's been following the prescription I gave him, and now his blood is too thick. He said, we need to get you in here. Before we do any of that, we need to do your labs and see where everything's at. So that would, if he goes in and does the labs now, he's going to be found out that he was using more tests, and all of those health markers that would, all those health markers are going to be out of range, making his doctor think that his TRT is now, screwed everything up. So it's a crappy place to be, right?
Yeah, you got to be careful. The only thing I can suggest in that situation is stall until you can get some intervention to sort your markers out yourself.
That's what I said too. I was like, yeah, even give us a few weeks. You're a little bit busy to get in for it right now.
Yeah.
All right. What else do we have here? Okay. I don't know what this word is. He says, blood work question, been getting high. Hold on a second. Let me blow this up. Here's the word. I don't want to put it on the screen because I don't think we'll get in any trouble for this one. I can put it on the screen. Getting high. What's ANION? Gap over the last year. All individual electrolytes are in range. Last number was 13.3. The range is 4 to 12. ANION.
I've never even heard of it.
ANI. Did he mean iron?
No.
That's it.
It's something to do with electrolytes. Yeah.
Yeah. The measurement of difference, the gap between negatively charged and positively charged electrolytes in your blood. Okay. So this is a word.
Why the
anion gap?
Why the flip are you bothering even measuring it in the first place? Do you remember that one we did with your good lady about information overkill on blood work?
Yeah. Is there something wrong with him, though, I wonder? I mean, it says a high anion gap reading often signals a serious health problem, such as uncontrolled diabetes or a drug overdose. I don't know.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. They're going to show in far other markers than just that.
Yeah. I never heard of the anion gap before.
I have no knowledge of it, but what I will say is it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole with bloods and start testing for loads of weird and spurious shit that actually has no relevance unless you actually have a problem.
Yeah.
And as that just described, this is something that becomes an issue or elevates if you've got diabetes or you've got a drug overdose and things like that. So there are far more common markers I would be focusing on rather than looking into these super complex markers that as a standalone indicate fuck all and need to be part of a collective to actually have any sort of impacting sense. So I wouldn't cherry pick things that sit out. The other thing as well, particularly with things like electrolytes and anything, also with not all vitamins, but a lot of vitamins, stuff like potassium, in particular calcium is another one, they're time sensitive.
Yeah.
So if you've drawn blood and it's not been at the lab or it's not at the lab within a very brief period of time, then the result is going to be incorrect.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were going to say time sensitive as in depending on how, say, hydrated you were that particular day.
Well, there's all that as well, but they're also time sensitive in the stability of the sample.
Yeah, okay.
There's a reason why diabetics use blood glucose meters. It's because the blood glucose reading deteriorates with time. So if you draw out blood and send it to a lab for blood glucose and it doesn't get tested for 24 hours, that blood glucose reading is not going to be accurate.
Okay.
that's why you use PG meters at point of draw. So these sort of things need to be considered with a lot of, because there is a lot of tests out there that you can get that actually are going to be inaccurate. I mean, we don't do calcium score for that reason. It doesn't keep well.
Okay.
We don't do potassium for the same reason. We do sodium, but we don't do potassium for the same reason. It doesn't keep well. And then you end up with loads of elevations which are actually false.
All right. We get asked this one a lot. I'm going to bring it back up anyway, though, because Colby asks us once again, what are your thoughts, guys, on Turkesterone?
From what I've seen in blood work, generally pretty effective. Doesn't work for everybody, but I've seen it push people out of range.
Out of range, really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking UK ranges here, which is not quite as generous as the American ones. But I've seen it put people into the low 30s, yeah.
Okay. So Dante, I believe Dante was the first person to come out with this. And now I just happened to watch I think Greg Doucette video this morning that he sells a product. I believe Derek from More Plates, More Dates sells a product. So apparently it's a popular online product. And Greg Doucette was going on and on about how pure his was and how he'll test it against anybody else's Turkesterone. Anyway, all I know is Dante had talked about this for about a decade now. And he has it in a product at True Nutrition. And he said the reason he brought it out was because it was something he wanted to use. He's not using gear anymore. And he said that if you're not using gear, like at all, and you were to use this year round, that you're going to be ahead of where you would have been, if you hadn't used it. That said, he said there's no way to compare it against actual gear. Like, it's not even the same conversation. That was his opinion, and I believe he was the guy who did bring it out initially.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. From a TRT natural standpoint, from what I've seen, it appears to be generally a very effective product. It doesn't. There's a lot of people that will have used in the past come off and obviously have maybe not TRT low, but low enough to want to improve them. I've seen a few cases where it hasn't worked in that sort of scenario or hasn't had a great impact in that sort of scenario. But these are people that have potentially already created chemical damage to their endocrine system through their previous usage, and that may have limited its ability to improve levels. But I've seen plenty of people get very good test levels off Turkesterone. Same with Tribulus, DAA, Macaroot, Tonga Ali. All those do appear to have quite positive effects on natural testosterone levels in a large number of people. I won't say everybody, but in a large number of people.
Yeah, I'll use D-aspartic acid with clients that have done a PCT, come off, recovered their natural test. Like, I've found that can be helpful after PCT is over to cycle that in. And I've seen people do really well with it. So you're not going to get like a supra range with it, though. Like, I wouldn't expect that, you have healthy test and you're going to take this and now it's going to get even, like, you're not going to get cycle like benefits from it.
No, I mean, you could potentially push just above range, so from a UK standpoint, our upper limit's 29. You might push it into the 30, 31, that sort of area. But you're not getting into the, 50s and the hundreds and above, which you would get from cyclitic doses. No, not at all.
Yeah. All right. How about salbutamol? I looked it up. It's albuterol. What about albuterol? So I think it's just a brand name as an alternative to clenbuterol.
I've got no personal experience with it. I don't know if you have.
Some, yeah. I've used it with a number of people in the past. I had a prescription for it myself. I still do, actually. I've got a bunch of it. I don't think it's nearly as effective as Clen for fat loss. For as a bronchodilator, I think it's a great medication, although it has a short half-life. But I would not use it as an alternative to Clen personally.
Just a little tidbit for people listening when it comes to, because you'll get this a lot with various different compounds. What about this one? Well, what about that one? Well, what about this? If it was any good, we'd be using it.
it would be just as popular as Clen, right?
We'd be using it. It's been around decades. It's nothing new. If it was any good, we'd be using it, because at the end of the day, this stuff isn't new. It's been in the marketplace a while. And if it had that solid, dependable, effective results to back it up, it would be getting used regular.
I will tell you just an interesting little story. I have a friend who has called... I do. I've got a couple, actually. You're my best friend, so he's not as good of a friend as you, Dave. I just want to be clear.
This starts as a lie straight away, just with that opening statement. But go on.
He has muscular dystrophy, okay? And so muscular dystrophy is like a catabolic breakdown of the muscles. It's fascioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy. So the muscles of the face, the scapula, those are the areas that are breaking down. This is just one of the, I think, 4 multiple types. Anyway, there was research done on patients with muscular dystrophy to show that albuterol would reduce the breakdown of muscle. Now, we saw the animal studies about clenbuterol, right? They said like, oh, Clen will actually grow muscle in rats or whatever animals they were testing on. We've always said like, but does that really equate in humans? I don't know, because that was an animal study. Humans are different, blah, blah, blah. Well, they do have in this particular population people with muscular dystrophy. They found that albuterol, which is chemically pretty darn similar to clenbuterol helps to is an anti-catabolic for animals. They found that albuterol, which they don't do testing on clenbuterol in the US because it's not a legal drug, but they have tested albuterol to show that it does work in humans with muscular dystrophy. So I'm going to throw it out there to you. We're healthy individuals, but if there is a potential for it to work as an anti-catabolic, it would make me think, well, I bet it does, and this is just my bro science brain working now, I bet it does work in Clen too.
I think it's already established that Clen is anti-catabolic. It's not established that it's anabolic, and there is a very big difference there.
Okay.
Something can prevent muscle loss.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's going to increase muscle growth.
Okay.
Two different mechanisms, 2 different processes. So one of the reasons why Clen's always been popular as a fat burner over T3 is that T3 is and can be catabolic.
Across the board, yeah.
Where Clen isn't. So there is a big difference between something being anti-catabolic and something being anabolic. They are not the same. So the fact that albuterol prevents muscle wastage or helps with muscle loss, great, and would make it a half-decent choice in a diet phase, particularly for someone who's natural.
Yeah.
But that is a long step away from something actually increasing muscle mass in an anabolic action.
I would say this, though, Dave. So you're comparing, like, say, T3, thyroid. So thyroid is legit catabolic. It's going to tear down everything, right? It's going to tear down fat. It's going to tear down muscle. Versus the mechanisms of Clen are going to go more toward fat. Like that specifically what it does is it's going to affect fat stores specifically. I think that in itself doesn't make it anti-catabolic. Do you know what I mean?
No, I believe that so what I believe, and if I've dreamt this up in my sleep, I apologize, and it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibilities that I have done.
Okay.
But I believe that there is data out there that shows that the rat studies were not supported in humans.
Okay.
But it was supported as an anti-catabolic agent, but it wasn't supported as an anabolic agent. So basically, Clen would preserve muscle tissue, but it wouldn't increase muscle tissue. Now, like I say, I may have dreamt that. I may have got that from some weird drug-induced coma.
Yeah.
But for some reason, that sticks in my head as being where we ended up with it all.
Okay. Well, whatever. So, but we do know, I think that there is something to that. I really do. I wouldn't put it this way, though. I wouldn't throw Clen in specifically to be like, oh, we need an anti-catabolic in here. You know what I mean? But it's kind of like there's a little bit of a bonus side effect if that's the truth.
Yeah. You need to speak to Clever Scott. Clever Scott will know.
Clever Scott? I'll talk to him about it. People do call him Clever Scott now.
Do they?
Yeah.
Well, he is. He's Clever Scott.
He is. He's a smart guy. I've seen if we have anything else here. We did have
the alternative of that, Scott, would be Dumb Scott, and I didn't really think that was fair. So
yeah, there's Scott, which is Scott Stevenson, and then Dumb Scott. Yeah, I'm glad you chose to go the other direction. Thank you for that, Dave. All right, we got a training question here. This would be a good place to go as we get closer to the end of the show. We still have Uncle Dave's advice. I say that now so that he can start thinking of one in the back of his head.
I was trying to think. I had one and I forgot it because I didn't write it down.
All right, so Ultra Floss says, thanks, guys. Question for the next podcast. I have a training-related question for DS Crosland. I love it. Everybody knows your middle name. I think it's amazing. I have been experimenting with continuously pulling the eccentric contraction in order to lengthen the muscle instead of a slow descent. Does this make sense so far?
I'm not sure. So say again.
Okay. I've been experimenting with continuously pulling the eccentric contraction in order to lengthen the muscle instead of a slow descent. Is this what DS means when he speaks about being in control of the weight, or rather the movement? Thanks very much, and I wish everybody a splendid day. He says, also, please get Roman Fritz on Blood, Sweat, and Gear if possible. I would love to get Roman on. He mentioned something a month ago or so, and I was like, hey, sure, we're recording tomorrow. And then I didn't hear back from him. So he's welcome anytime he wants to come on. We'd love to have him.
Right. So he's saying he's continually pulling.
So is that yeah, he's pulling on the eccentric. I don't understand what that means. The eccentric contraction.
What I believe is that when you contract a muscle, rather than getting to a stop point, right? The biceps is the easiest one to give an example of this. So so most people come to about here, and then they'll either tense or they just return. I believe in continually into.
Since you've said that, Dave, I do that now. I've been doing that in the gym, by the way. I like it.
And then a nice controlled return.
Right.
But you're going to get the lengthening of the muscle through the full extension, not anything to do with the contraction.
Yeah.
So you will start to activate more of the muscle in totality with that extended pull at the top. So as you pull in, you're recruiting more of the totality of the muscle.
Okay, yeah.
But I mean, from a control point of view, I just feel the way I describe control for me, or for me to describe control to somebody else, it would be that you should be able to stop, start, and change direction at any point through that motion immediately. And if when someone says stop, you continue moving for a period, then you're not in control. There's momentum in play.
Yeah, I could go with that.
And that's how I would describe control, and that's how I've always done my reps. So at any point, I could stop, start, go down, go back up, change direction at any point within the range, because at all point within the range, I'm in control of the load. So you'll see a lot of people that will drive off the chest, and then their control starts from halfway up the rep, and then they control it. But that first half of the movement, they've got no power because they've always relied on explosive push, like explosive drive. Where what I prefer is that from this point, I can just go bump and move. And if I want to go 2 inches and stop, go back down and go back up, I can do it. Where a lot of people, they'll drive and they've got no control till after that initial drive. So they've got this massive momentum drive at the beginning, and then they're in control of the bar from that point moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with that. I'm with that 100%. And I've been using your technique on curls, Dave, by the way.
Your arms look massive.
They actually, I'm starting to put on some size again, believe it or not. I'm not training to hard failure, but I've been training about 4 days a week now. And I do have an arm day. And when I curl, it's funny, man, as much as I've learned over the years, for a long time, I had listened to this guy that he was a firefighter. And this is like when I was 15 years old. And he used to tell me, he was like, when you curl, you don't need to use heavy weight. He was like, just make sure that you squeeze, like twist your wrist and flex at the top. And so for some reason, I was like, yep, I got curls figured out for the rest of my life now. And I never thought about them again for like a decade. And since then, last 8 years, I have thought about them differently since. But yeah, the last couple of months, Dave, when I'm doing my curls, I don't just bring them up there and try to get to the top. I keep trying to push through. And even doing this without weight in my hands, like I freaking feel that right now, It's good. All right, real quick, see if we can just jump through one or two that we had left over. Folks love the show let's see, one of the best when it comes to steroids. I have a question, please. I'm on test at 700 milligrams per week, and I can see plenty of sebums on my shoulders only. What causes them? And would you tell me how to get rid of them, please? This is a weird... Sebums, he says. So I think he means acne. Sebum is the oil, so there's the sebaceous gland. And the sebaceous
I thought you said he had loads of Chris Bumsteads sitting on his shoulders then. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, little Chris Bumsteads. Little mustaches.
Yeah, sebums.
Sebums.
Yeah, little sebums.
I think he means acne. Why is he getting acne on 700 tests, Dave?
Probably there's two drivers in there, high estrogen or high DHT. It depending on your levels would depend on which one. We don't know if you're using anything to manage estrogen, so at this point I'm going to go for high estrogen.
Yeah, it's possible. Get your estrogen checked, number one.
The other thing, I had this conversation with someone today, actually, and I'm not saying this is particularly in his case, but in the UK, over the last 4 or 5 days, we had a sudden spike in temperatures.
Oh.
And all of a sudden, people are getting more acne. Well, that's because you're sweating more.
Oh, yeah. What's your temperature?
Bear that in mind. Well, it's not super. I think it's 23, 24 today.
Oh, that's not hot. That's 73 degrees, 24.
It's hot
degrees.
For England.
Yeah.
I live up north. We
had about 30 degrees here recently, Dave, with all the humidity.
I'd say it's about 93, 95% humidity today as well. It's quite sticky.
All right. Real quick last one, because we didn't get to it last week. New listener recently subscribed. Thank you for that. And guys, if you're new to our content, let me encourage you to subscribe, because we do have several shows that come out each week, and that's the only way you're going to get to see all of them, especially if you hit the bell. He says, apart from Caber, are there any alternative compounds or supplements that are used in the porn industry? My lady would be proud of you. Thanks for the advice.
I don't know if P5P is going to have the same impact that Caber would have on sexual function.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't think so.
No, I don't. I've never heard of anything else being used other than Caber. I've not heard of Primo being used or anything like that. I've only ever heard of Caber.
I mean, you could. What would you call it, Dave? When the life-giving fluid? Remember that term you created?
Yes.
If you were to use more HCG and or Clomid, that would help in the production of more life-giving fluid. There is that. That could definitely keep you remembered in the industry. You know what I'm saying? You could make a memorable impact.
If you were looking to create a river of life-giving fluid,
yes,
or go into production of pearl necklaces, then I would probably suggest more HMG.
It's expensive.
Well, I thought there was good money in porn.
Yeah, you can afford it. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. You have to invest in yourself if you're going to be a part of the industry.
Invest in your business. Yes.
Yeah. It's like your calling card. You know what I'm saying? You got to have that HMG on board.
Yes, that would be a calling card, wouldn't it? Yes.
Speaking of the UK, one of our listeners sent this to me the other day. He says this is a southerner's view of the UK and Ireland. And basically,
that's why it's wrong.
It shows all of the UK except for one little sliver that says the South at the very bottom.
I agree that everything, the South starts way higher.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, way higher. Way higher up.
I think this is like a joke.
So where it says footballers live here,
yeah,
everything below that is the South.
Okay. Huh. The Beatles.
Yeah, that's South.
The Beatles are part of the South. Liverpool is part of the South?
They're northern. And M62 is northern, so yeah, I'll give the Beatles of northern. But Cheshire, which is just south of the Beatle place, that's definitely southern.
What does this mean? It says up in Scotland, it says the nice place in Scotland by Gulf.
Where does it say that?
It says the Old North/South Divide. And above that, yeah.
That's Edinburgh.
Yeah, it says the nice place in Scotland.
Yeah, that's Edinburgh.
That's the only nice place?
Well, some people would argue that. I disagree. I think there's some very nice places in Scotland.
I didn't think you liked the Scots up there.
I didn't say anything about the people. I said the place.
Okay. You don't like Scottish people, huh?
I don't mind Scottish people.
I have a friend named Scott Wesson. He's a bodybuilder, and he lives in Edinburgh. He's a nice guy.
Edinburgh is a beautiful city. To be honest, I don't mind Glasgow. I find Glasgow as a city, I don't mind it at all. But Edinburgh is a stunning city. Yeah, it's from an architectural sort of. You don't feel like you're in the city. Edinburgh feels very open.
Looks like a castle.
There is a castle.
Yeah, but I mean, like the whole thing. It looks like you're like, I don't know. It looks like you're back in time or something up there.
Very old city, very old architecture. Yeah, Glasgow has its old bits, but it's much more of a modern city.
That's what I saw by you, like Manchester. There was like a lot of old industry buildings, but then there was also like new shiny glass buildings mixed in.
Yeah, Manchester's a very modern city. Whereas you go somewhere like York, which we went to, was obviously a very old city.
That was cool. I like that a lot. That was fun. Victoria will have to see that when we come to visit.
Huddersfield, where I live, is just a shithole, but it is what it is. Yeah.
There's a lot of takeout there. You said a lot of like Chinese takeout places and stuff. A lot of pizza.
Huddersfield's a crap hole. The surrounding area is stunning. The surrounding area is beautiful countryside, but the town itself is just shit.
What's so bad about it?
It's just a dump. It's got nothing to offer. It is just a dump.
Are there any good fish and chips places in Huddersfield?
There is. There's one close to me that's very good. So you don't watch films, so this makes this very difficult.
Okay. I've seen some movies in my life.
Okay. Have you seen Snatch?
Yeah, of course I did. That was good. It's been like since it came out. So it's been like 20 years.
So do you remember Gorgeous George?
I mean, like if I started watching again, yes, I would.
Okay, Gorgeous George is the boxer that's supposed to throw the fight with what's his name?
Brad Pitt?
Brad Pitt, yeah. And he has to replace the fighter because George gets in a scrap and gets battered by somebody, I can't remember who now.
Okay.
Yeah, so the original guy at the beginning of the film, Gorgeous George, he owns a chip shop just down the road from me.
The real guy does?
Yeah. He was also in Mean Machine with Vinnie Jones.
I was trying to look up Gorgeous George, but somebody else comes up. An American professional wrestler.
If you put Gorgeous George from this film Snatch, you will get the real one.
Let's see here. Oh, is this him here? The guy in the background?
Yep, that's Gorgeous George.
Okay.
Yep.
He doesn't look very gorgeous there. He looks kind of tough. You know what I mean?
So his name escapes me now, and I should know it because I know him and his brother quite well, actually. And for some reason, I'm having a mental block.
I should watch that movie again, though. That was a good movie.
Yeah, but he has a chip shop just down the road from me, and that is actually very, very good.
That actual guy does?
Yes.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was a big dude. Look at this shot here.
He was a professional rugby player.
Was he really?
Mm.
Huh. Hey, Uncle Dave, do you have any advice for us today?
Sort of.
Somebody told us too on one of the couple episodes ago. They're like, guys, you really need to write your Uncle Dave's advice down because you've done this same one like 4 times now. That's what they said.
I could probably believe that. Yeah, I do apologize.
He's just trying to nail the point home, guys.
And I think I've probably done this one before as well. It's quite a common saying. So people probably will have heard this, but it's still very true. You're never going to stop it raining, so you've got to learn to dance in the rain.
Huh.
And if you want that broken down, basically, life is always going to get shitty. No matter who you are, what you do, you're always going to have problems.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it?
You're never getting rid of them. You know, your life's never going to be that perfect. You don't have problems. Doesn't matter how financially successful you are, that comes with problems. Families come with problems. Relationship comes with problems. There will always be problems.
Yeah.
So you've got to learn to take the positivity from those problems and get what you can out of those problems in a positive way. Even if it's just learning what not to do, it's still a positive. So I say, life will always rain. Just got to learn to dance in the rain.
I think that's good advice, and you haven't said that one before.
I wasn't sure.
Uncle Dave's advice, guys. Dave, do you have anything you want to tell us about coming up or anything like that? You got anything you're doing? Any stuff happening?
I'm going on holiday.
Oh, where are you going?
Well, so I was supposed to be going away in the camper.
Okay.
But the camper's broke.
Oh, no. How did it break?
The hydraulics are fucked on the slide outs.
Oh, shit. At least you found out at home, because if those things like popped out and then you couldn't pop them back in, you would be in trouble, man.
It is popped out. This is the problem.
Oh.
So we were supposed to be going around Europe for 2.5 weeks. Can't do that. So the boss has made me pay for a trip to Greece.
Oh, no kidding. What are you going to do in Greece?
So I'm going to sit by the... Well, actually, I'm probably going to work most of it. But when I'm not working, I'm going to sit by the pool.
Okay.
He's literally going to be one of those do nothing, sit down. I'm not interested in the culture. Not that I've got anything against Greek culture or anything like that.
Dave doesn't like people from Greece, by the way, guys.
No, I've got nothing to do with that at all. It's just going to be one of those go, do nothing, sit by a pool holidays. And that's it. So, yeah, I'm going on holiday on the 15th of July for 10 days.
Okay, nice. And let me ask you, how far away is that flight for you guys from Manchester? You fly out of Manchester? Yeah,
I think it's about 4 or 5 hours.
Okay. Yeah, that's a long trip for us. That's not bad for you.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Huh. And then obviously the big holiday is January, February next year.
What's that one?
Japan.
Oh, dude, I've always wanted to go to Japan. I have a friend that just went. Her pictures were incredible, man.
Bucket list job.
Are you going to do anything there work-wise? Or are you just
fucking... I'll still have to work. I can't get away with not working. But we're doing 5 days in Tokyo. And we've got 2 days where we get a guide. And it's not like a prearranged thing. The guide takes you where you want to go.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we're going to a car meet while we're in Tokyo.
Oh, wow. It's going to be a different group of cars, I bet, than what you're used to, or what I'd be used to.
And then we're going to Osaka. We're doing the bullet train. Then we're going up north and we're doing the snow festival.
Oh, wow. Huh. That's in January, did you say?
End of January into February. So we're We're doing, I think it's just over 2 weeks, but it's like 5 cities.
So is that like summertime for them?
No, it's winter.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's winter. So, but I want to see the snow festival.
I don't know what that is.
So they build these like 30 and 40 foot snow sculptures.
Really?
Yeah, it's massive.
I'm looking this up. Oh wow, they're like buildings basically.
Yeah, it's no middle of the road shit. It's proper full on.
Like, is this a good example here?
Yep.
It's all made out of snow.
But they're massive as well. They're not like little things. Some of these things are 30, 40 foot high. Yeah.
Like that.
Yep.
Holy crap. So in Plymouth, little town by me here, we have the Plymouth Ice Sculpture Festival, and they carve sculptures out of ice. But usually it's in February, and I remember last year, or a couple of years ago, it got real warm, and you could wear shorts, and they all melted. It's bad. Yeah.
That must be gutting. But yeah, so we're doing Japan, and we're doing all the touristy things, but we've got some like pretty neat stuff as well.
All right. Well, guys, we appreciate everybody tuning in. And Dave, do you have any spots for coaching right now?
I do actually, yes. I've just had a couple finish because they've just competed and they do their own off seasons. So I do actually have a couple opened up, yeah.
Okay, reach out to Dave on social media. I'll have links below to that. You can hit me up, McNallyDiets@gmail.com. You can go to Strom Sports Nutrition to get some good health and performance supplements if you're in the UK. You can get your lab work done if you're in the UK by Dave. Go to evalbloodanalysis.com. He'll take care of you. In fact, he'll drive all the way to your house. He'll do your labs, even if you're 45 minutes away. He did it for Cuba. He'll do it for you. Right?
I did do it for Cuba this morning. Yes, I did go to Cuba this morning.
And Dave will go to your house too. He loves you. Even if you live in London, he'll drive all the way there, whatever time of day or night. You just tell Dave, pencil it in. He'll do it. He's got all the time in the world. Also, go to truenutrition.com. Use our code THINK for additional savings. Supplementsource.ca for Canadians. And thank you to everybody from Patreon. Guys, leave me some Patreon questions. We'll tackle them on the next show. Guys, for another episode of Drugs and Stuff with Dave Crosland, we'll see you soon. Thanks, Dave.